Okay, so if the Teslas of this world, the BlackRocks of this world, the Fidelities of this world are striving to find, in this case, clean nickel, it could be any commodity, to be socially responsible in every way across the entire length of the food chain.
Yeah.
That's great, and whatever I think some people would call them some snowflake millennials. They want this, but at the end of the day, if there's not enough nickel, we're going to have to come back to producing nickel the old-fashioned way, and as dirty, as polluting as that may be, it needs must. So, what are you suggesting? A bifurcated market in terms of pricing here, or what happens?
Yeah, no, I think again, I think to the extent that there will be insufficient supply of clean green product, and the demand for that will exceed that. Again, there's often times where people would like something, but they're really not willing to pay up for it. Again, we'll see. I think we don't need them to pay extra. This is our whole approach with Crawford and Canada Nickel and net zero, really shouldn't cost us anything extra because of the local advantages that we have. But, again, I think if prices don't get to a point that they incent enough clean green production, then, premiums will have to emerge to make that happen. So, again, if you're in the chain, then you want to make sure you get those clean green sources of supply sooner than later, so you don't, you get access to it without having to pay the full premium for it.
So, but what are the options available? I mean, do these companies buy carbon credits if they're producing dirt? We'll call it dirty nickel, old-fashioned way. Do they get taxed more by governments or by industry? Somehow pays for it. I mean, what are the options available here? What do you see this new world looking like? Because I do get the bit that Teslas will demand it. Millennials and whoever the new version of millennials is will demand it, and more funds will demand it. But at the end of the day, when the rubber hits the road, if they're running out of nickel, they could care less, right?
Agreed. But I think the carbon pricing mechanisms, you're seeing more and more jurisdictions really starting to talk about pricing carbon. And so, when that happens and that really gets factored into, the cost, Indonesia, the reason, they're doing that in Indonesia is that's the cheaper way to produce the material. So if that starts to somehow, as it's make its way, out of Indonesia and into the market, and somewhere along, whatever carbon is embedded in that product has to be sort of taxed or penalized, then that will start to change behaviors. And again, market mechanisms are generally always the best way to make adjustments rather than individual sort of regulation. And so I think the tricky part is again, China's a huge market. For anybody who thinks that China still depends on the rest of the world for exports. No. I mean, it's a massive internal market, and part of the reason they've been so, been flexing their strength politically is because they can really much more afford to do that than they could say 5 years, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. And so, I think the thing might be, some of the bifurcation that might happen is just more, okay, Chinese industry is okay for the time being with that kind of carbon footprint, and the rest of the world, might not be, right? So, that might be one of the sort of key dividing points in terms of, okay, well, that Chinese EV companies aren't going to get to sell their cars outside China because they won't be allowed, or there won't be a market for it, or they'll be taxed so heavily that they'll price them out of the market effectively.
Well, I think in the current environment of trade wars and tariffs going on, it's probably very topical discussion. Maybe something we can pick up on another time. But are there any examples where bifurcated markets have actually worked? Because I was struggling to think of one.
That's a good question. Maybe, you know what, I'll think about that over the coming week and see if I come back with, because again, anytime any kind of bifurcation opens up is that you then end up with, the gap for that product tends to get closed over time.